Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. We've got a lot of democracy and advocacy items to get through today, including some actions you can take to help. So let's not play around, we got work to do. Quick shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Shay Meehan and Nathan Stankowski, as well as all our other patrons. You keep us all informed and engaged. If any of you out there want to join these advocates of humanity first and independent journalism, head on over to patreon.com/YangDaily. It would only take a couple of bucks a month from each listener to keep this podcast and community going and growing into the future. Now on to the news. Well, obviously, we just had MLK Day, another great time to remind everyone in your life that he died advocating for UBI, as that appears to be part of his legacy that has been lost, if not suppressed. It's a bit of a subdued occasion this year, considering the current threats to democracy and King's civil rights goals make celebrating his legacy a bit muddied, but instead of taking away from the holiday, we should let those events fuel exactly the kind of activism that King modeled throughout his life. Voting rights are under attack. Democracy in general is losing the trust of the people, and advances toward UBI are timing out. Just about everything is on the line this year. Forward shared a sentiment often espoused by MLK that progress is rarely as fast as we want it, often not as fast as we need it, but it's imperative that we keep moving and in the right direction. And that is what we all have to do. His son, MLK III, said at the Arizona rally this week, quote, "Our daughter has less rights around voting than she had when she was born," end quote. And that could be said for much of the country right now. It is unacceptable. The U.S. has never been perfect, never will be, but we have moved in the right direction since our founding. We cannot be the generation that sees that reverse. Whether by modifying the filibuster or somehow getting enough Republicans on board for a few key measures, voting rights must be defended, the CTC improvements must be extended, and election flaws must be fixed before it is too late. MLK III also had pointed words for those blocking these efforts. Kyrsten Sinema recently reiterated her commitment to blocking any filibuster reform, prompting MLK III to criticize her specifically in his speech. It's just the latest in a multifaceted campaign by progressive groups to pressure Sinema and others to take action, joining calls, letters, billboards, and TV ads. It is up to all of us to contribute until she and other blockers are convinced of the need for reform and of their personal need to support it. As flawed as our system may be, ultimately, they do answer to the people come election time. Use your power. The first round of CTC checks since the temporary improvements expired has now been missed, leaving many families once again at a loss. There have been quite a few newspaper editorial boards criticizing Congress's failure to extend the CTC improvements. Maine's Bangor Daily News is calling for a bipartisan plan to restart a child tax credit. The LA Times says we're paying a terrible social and economic cost. Has your local paper issued an opinion piece on the CTC or UBI yet? If not, write up a quick info sheet and send it in. Local news is more trusted than mainstream. These little stories can make a big difference, and they do publish opinion pieces from people like you. And while we're giving feedback, it seems it's time to send some humanity forward's way. HF tweeted recently that their policy council member, Samuel Hammond, along with the Niskanen Center's Director of Poverty and Welfare Policy, have drafted a compromise CTC reform that will please even Manchin. After looking at the proposal, it's not hard to see why. They basically decided to give him everything he wants. Their proposal includes work requirements, and not just for everyone, but for able-bodied working-age adults and excluding families with kids 0 to 6, because why not throw in a bunch of complexity on top of the most anti-UBI condition? It also includes lowering the means testing threshold to exclude more middle-class families, all this because Manchin claims he is worried unconditional money will erode motivation to work, a belief that is flatly disproven by empirical evidence. And remember that in this case, motivation to work is just a pretty euphemism for coercion to work. Heaven forbid we interfere with wage slavery. Needless to say, I'm rather appalled to see Humanity Forward supporting this. I do understand that they are doing so as a last resort, with the supposed alternative being nothing, but it's not time for last resorts. Biden's big bill has been rejected, yes. Will they be able to get Manchin and other centrists on board to pass it eventually? I do not know, but that is not the only option. Republican Senator Susan Collins says she is open to considering Romney's CTC proposal, as well as a tax credit for employers that offer paid family and medical leave. Might I remind you that Romney's CTC bill is even less conditional than the temporary CTC improvements that passed last year. Yes, it cuts into some other welfare to make up the difference and remain budget neutral, but if we're compromising, would you rather compromise on the benefit amount or on the conditionality? Personally, my priority is removing the conditions, because that is what UBI is all about. We need to establish the practice of giving financial aid with no strings attached to everyone. The amount is a lesser challenge. It's almost better if it starts small, because that will lessen the anxiety in those who fear the breakdown of society from the collapse of wage slavery. Let everyone see that unconditional cash is an unconditional win, and growing the dollar amount from there will be easy. That is what Romney's plan offers us. It replaces conditional welfare with unconditional welfare, which is the end goal. Why is Humanity Forward compromising their principles to woo Manchin when we could instead get the votes from Romney and other Republicans who are offering a plan that is everything we want? Are congressional Democrats unwilling to pursue this better option? And is it equally impossible to get Dems to force Manchin to vote on a standalone CTC bill to extend the previous improvements before we go gutting them? I would like to hear more from Humanity Forward on that. Speaking of UBI, France's Green Party presidential candidate Yannick Jadot, no, I did not look up the pronunciation, has announced he supports a basic income. I haven't been able to find anything more than the tweet that Scott shared, in which Jadot says he wants an automatic citizen income that would keep everyone age 18 plus above the poverty line. That could mean a UBI, or it could mean a negative income tax. Either way, it's a major improvement over traditional welfare, as it's automatic and less conditional. Now, he won't win the race, but every candidate pushing the right solution is progress and helps inform the people and legitimize the concept. Finally, the premier democracy reform group RepresentUs has started an outreach program for podcasts. Podcast hosts can join the network, pledging to use their shows to help boost the signal on all the reforms that Yang Gang support, including announcements, informing on key issues, social channels, and shouting out the website where listeners can take further action on gerrymandering, election reform, voting rights, and more. You know I'm on board, but let any other podcast hosts you listen to know about it and send them the link in the description to sign up. Let's start a movement. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Bookmark and share MLK's wisdom and his support for UBI and Jadot's UBI policy. Ask Humanity Forward about Romney's proposal, contact your local papers about the CTC, and your podcasts about joining RepresentUs. Flood Congress with calls, tweets, faxes, and letters using the easy volunteer contacts below. If you need help, consult the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, or United Way, and don't forget to Yang Daily.